Before this video begins, I would like to take a quick moment to thank Baen Books for helping set up the interview that is in this video, and I would also like to apologize for the audio quality. When I was working in editing this video, I ran into some problems and I was not able to get the best audio quality. So you can still hear the interview, but it's just, you might have to turn up your volume a lot. I apologize for that. This was in no way the fault of the author or the publisher that helped set this up. This was my problem in editing, but I still hope that you enjoy the video. Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have the privilege of being joined by the delightful Marisa Wolf. Marisa, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are a new author. You are writing for Baen now. You have a new book coming out in February, I believe.
Yeah.
But before we talk about that, I want to talk about how did you get into reading science fiction and writing it?
Yeah. So I have been a nerd my entire life. I'm a second-generation nerd. My dad is a nerd. So we watched Star Trek together. We watched Star Wars together. I have been reading comic books since I was trusted to touch them with my dirty little child hands. So it's helpful. So just love it. And my very first story I wrote when I was 6, and it was a genre story because it was about Sarah and the Idaho potatoes. I don't, again, know why. I've always loved potatoes, but here we are. So they were giant, and they took over the world, and it was such a good story, it got laminated. So I've been chasing that high ever since.
Were you influenced by James and the Giant Peach by any chance?
Probably, and Clifford the Big Red Dog,
yes.
right? It's always like the giant things, so.
Now, when were you in high school and in college? Did you ever get into writing before you did now?
Yeah, so for about 20 years, it's probably more than that, but I don't do time math. So I wrote fan fiction in the world of Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey.
Oh my.
Yes.
That's nice. It's nice to see how influential she has been because everyone focuses on Tolkien and Jordan, which rightfully so.
Amazing.
But
yep.
she also, and it's not just fantasy. Like it's a sci-fi in there.
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. So she is, every time I move or have to reorganize my books or anything, I can get through it. I don't stop and read for hours until I hit the Anne McCaffrey shelf. And it's all over. I feel like she's just part siren.
Do you have a favorite of hers?
Oh my God, yes, all of them. My favorite is probably, no, I don't. I'm not doing it, yeah. Yeah.
I've read the first 3, and I really like the first one.
They're really good. I also like Dragon's Dawn. A lot of people don't like it. It's when she put the science fiction into it. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I just reread it recently.
She has a deep bench of writing, and now her son also.
Yes, he's also very kind, which is nice. Yeah.
So, getting into this book that we're promoting, you have the book Beyond Enemies, which is a science fiction book being published by Baen, and I want to take a quick second and say thank you to Baen for arranging all of this and for hosting this interview today. But it's through Baen, and it is coming out in February of 2024. I don't have the placard of the image out today, so it'll be magically
It's down
floating.
at the booth. It's fine.
It'll be magically floating right here.
It's so pretty.
Thank you. So can you tell me a little bit about what the book's about?
Yes. So it's science fiction, and it's basically about a girl and the AI in her head who have been fighting a war their whole life. They were created to fight this war, and then they realize it's not the war they thought they were fighting, and it's just conspiracies all the way down. And they have to decide what happens next.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were there any particular science fiction books that served as an influence, whether it was, I love this book, I want to write like this, or I think I can do better on that version?
Only the first.
Only the first one?
Yeah. There was no spite writing in this one. I have done spite writing. There's not any in this. This one is more, I love books like The Forever War, or it's just, I just love the books where it's like, here's what we think is happening, but here's actually what's happening, and then what it says about society and what it says about the people involved. I really enjoy that, so I'd say that's probably an influence. The Bolo books about the intelligent tanks, I think those have been really fun. I read those. I did an anthology called Chicks in Tank Tops, also by Baen.
Oh, I do have. Yes. Oh, I wish I had known. There is that book somewhere around here.
Yes.
Tank Tops.
Oh, yeah, we could have put it
Joelle
here.
Presby also.
She did, yeah.
Contributed. What was your story about in that one?
So it was this world. So I wrote the story Next Question in this anthology by Jason Cordova and Esther Friesner. They're amazing. And in that story, I read like 5 Bolo books because I was like, I want to do a tank, but I want to do my own tank. So like, what's out there? And so I wrote this short story and then finished it and could not stop thinking about the characters. And so I was talking to Tony, the publisher, the boss of Baen, and she was like, yeah, your stories have been pretty good lately. Like, I really like them. And I said, oh, thank you. Well, here's this one I can't stop thinking about. She's like, And so I told her more. She's like, cool. Why don't you send me that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were writing it, were there any challenges in terms of writing style that you had? Whether there was, you had struggled with description or you had to work on characters? Was there something that came natural and something you had to work on hard?
Yeah. Such a good question, Jonathan, because I actually wrote this book twice. Not entirely, but so things that come pretty easy to me, I think because of 20 years of fan fiction, is character development.
Yep.
So I knew exactly who my characters were. I knew exactly what they were going to do. I knew their voices and their tones, and I had a lot of fun with their sassiness. I like sassiness. And that was great. I felt like that came really easy. The whole middle of my book kind of fell apart. So it was a very mushy middle the first time I wrote it, where I was like, and then they did this, and then they did this, and then they did this, because I was so into the characters that they were just doing things, which was wonderful.
So does that mean that you're a pantser instead of a plotter?
I did have an outline, and then I just kind of wandered, and where I went away from the outline is where it got really messy. So I had to kind of redo what I did on Post-it, so it was pretty exciting.
How detailed of an outline did you write?
Not at all detailed, because I am a pantser by nature. But I needed to do an outline to send to Tony to write the book, right? So had to do an outline. And then I had been thinking about the story for so long. I knew like the big beats of it, and I broke it down by chapter, but it's like the first section was like multiple bullets per chapter. The second section was like 3 bullets per chapter. And then the third one was like, here are the vibes. This is what's going to happen in the third part of the book. And Tony was like, no. So those each had 1 bullet. Yeah, but I got there. We put it back together.
I know that some authors, they say, like Stephen King's, they say no outlines, and then you have someone like Kevin Anderson, his outline is usually
detailed.
70 pages.
Yeah, I mean David Weber, right?
David
he writes,
Weber,
yeah,
he writes detailed
a
ones as
novella
well.
of an outline. Yeah, it's awesome.
So you're somewhere in the middle. You have one, but it's not.
It's more of a guideline.
Guideline.
Yeah.
I understood that reference. So when you were writing the characters, did you have any tropes that you were trying to steer clear from, or conversely, any tropes that you kind of grafted onto because that's a trope that you really enjoy in your books?
So my favorite trope is found family, and so I love it a lot. And there isn't it's not a super formal found family, because my character spends a lot of time, Talon spends a lot of time kind of trying to distance herself from events and things, and she keeps losing friends, and it's hard, so you don't get a ton of it, but they do all have to come together to make the things happen. And I cannot give a spoiler for the most important part of my found family, so you're going to have to please read the book and see if you can figure it out. You can email me. So I do use that one a lot. This is like very lightly military sci-fi. I wouldn't call it heavily military sci-fi, because I've not been in the military, but I have a lot of very dear friends who are or have been in the military. And so it's very important to me to not make this like we are only here to save the world. Like they're people, and they get to be people, and they get to have a sense of humor, because none of the military people I know are serious. They're serious at their jobs, I'm sure. But in real life, they're whole people, and they have a sense of humor. And when they tell the stories, fun stuff happens, funny stuff happens, so much inside jokes happen, so much shenanigans. And I can't steal all of those because they're not my stories. But I like to make sure there's humor there. They get to be whole people, and not just I'm here to be a weapon, or I'm here to be such a flawed human you don't know why anyone gave me a laser rifle.
And that's, I think, good, because when you have military sci-fi, you said it's light, but when you have military sci-fi, so often the mediocre ones fall into the just write them doing military stuff, and their lives outside of their specific role in the military is non-existent, and so it just feels so bland. So I'm glad you mentioned that you do that. On that note, do you do anything to make character voice different between different characters?
They're all just distinct people in my brain, which probably says a lot about what goes on in my brain. But I did a couple of times. So we've got different kinds of AI soldiers, basically. And I wanted them to have slightly different ways that they talked. And so at first I didn't make them weird enough. And this awesome author friend of mine, Marisa Wolf, she read the book first. And I was like, I think they need to be weirder. She's like, yes, make them weirder. And so I did. And they're super weird, and the way they talk is weird. And so it worked for their voice to keep it very clear. Because I wanted, like, you have your own slang and inside jokes. You have your own way of doing things to make it clear that they were different branches.
You don't want to just heavily rely on a phrase that the character says.
Yeah.
You want to make it seem like it's the general personality.
Yeah.
When you're writing the book, do you find yourself writing a general amount regularly? Like, you sit down and you write 2,000 words? Or are you like a mood writer? Whereas we have mood readers where we'll read 500 pages one week and then none the next.
Yeah.
Which do you fall into?
I would say I'm again in the middle.
Yeah.
Because yes, kind of like it's a guideline for the outline. Like, I got really disciplined about it because I had a deadline.
Yeah.
And like a real deadline, like that I got paid for.
Yeah. Exactly.
So like
you get disciplined to do that.
Correct. So like every couple of weeks I was like, how many words do I have to write this week to get there? And then I would do it. But like when I was rewriting, I had a certain amount of time to fix the middle. And I went a good 3 weeks and I was like, oh, get to it. It's in my brain. I'm thinking about it. So then it was kind of panic in like 3 or 4 days of like, here's 10,000 new words. These words are gone. Okay, great. Now let's go back and make sure they make sense. So it really depends. And it depends on the project too. Some I'm very good at being disciplined, and some like, it's just vibes today, man. I don't know. I'm not there yet.
So how many short stories do you have that have been traditionally published or self-published?
Well, I don't have anything self-published.
Okay.
I'm very not organized and a little too lazy for self-publishing. So amazing people. Yeah,
I wanna do that.
it's so many things. So
Yeah.
many things. They're amazing.
So
So indie publishing. So across indie publishing and Baen, I think I'm up to like 27 short stories.
That's so. Have you gotten into a routine of the process of do you outline a short story and then on that note do you have like you write it in a week, or is it more different per short story?
Very different for short story, and my level of discipline at that time. So another incredible author, Casey Azell, who actually got me. I did fan fiction with her for 20 some odd years.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
She is why I'm published. Yes, yes. So she and I just wrote 2 short stories together over the last like 2 weeks, and we wrote one in like 4 months, I think, because we were just kind of talking about it, and then we kind of get to it, and then we got to it, and then we wrote the other one in 2 days.
Yes.
So then that's all of my short stories. It's like sometimes I can write it in a day because the deadline is tomorrow and I have not written it. Only has happened twice, and that's fine. And sometimes it is like I have a plan and I get it done in like 3 or 4 days or 6 months.
Do you ever have the moment where some authors, they spend so much time, like they'll just be walking or doing a normal routine, and their brain starts going into writing mode? Does yours do that, or have you not gotten there yet?
No, I've gotten there. My favorite, so I do the little like notebook by the bed thing, and often like I'll come up with some idea in the middle of the night or right before I go to bed, and the next day I'm like, what?
What was I thinking?
You're like, cheetahs? Like where did these come in? I have no idea. Like, whoa, I don't know what this was. But one time, one of the books I wrote with Casey Azell, Hunter, my favorite scene in that whole book, I woke up at 3 in the morning and I was like, holy crap, and I scribbled it on the Post-it and I went back to sleep. And the next day I was like, please don't be that. Please don't suck. Please don't suck. Please don't suck. And I read it and I was like, I think this is good. And I wrote it and I sent it to Casey, and she was like, why am I crying at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday? What is wrong with you? I was like, it was good.
So you feel comfortable writing with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever have to change your style when you do a co-written story, or have you been able to keep your own?
I think I keep my own. But what I will say about co-writing is it has forced me to level up. Because I've written with some really talented people. So Casey Azell is freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
I've written with Mark Wandry and Chris Kennedy, who have very different strengths than I do. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes almost like a competition of like, oh, you just made me laugh out loud. Well, I'm gonna make you laugh out loud, but in my voice.
Yeah.
And so it makes me level up because I have to look at, how did you do that? And how could I do something like that isn't like, now it's Marisa pretending to be Chris Kennedy, but this is like my version of it. And that's been really awesome.
In your book, you talk about AI. Does your book go into the depths of the the fears that people have with AI now, because that is a very prevalent discussion. It's very topical.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be I think it's going to be a great selling point for the book.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people who don't, it's not because they necessarily like AI, but they're so invested in the ideas of it that they're looking for movies, whether it's Mission Impossible or the Creator movie, which your book sounded a little bit like.
Oh, interesting.
But how much of that fear and danger was in there, or were you beyond that, just writing the book?
Was I beyond the enemies? No. So I
wasn't going
thank
for
you
that.
for letting me work that in, though. I appreciate it. So yes, it's in there, right? Like, I don't know that it was a specific, like, I watched Terminator too many times when I was young sort of thing, but it's definitely in there, and it's part of why the AI exists the way it does in the world.
Yeah.
So in order to like ride herd on an AI, basically, they're partially grown in a human brain. So the human is genetically engineered to accept part of the neural pathways of the AI. Because it's like a little toss away, like little info paragraph, but it's basically like you can't train an AI to say, killing these people, awesome. Killing these people, no, don't do that. They're just like, everybody dies, nobody dies. What do you want from us? So that's part of why they were made the way they were made. And then I also spend a little bit of time talking about how the various military overlords they're not really overlords, but they spent a lot of money to keep the AIs from being able to talk to each other. And that money was not well spent. So there are some things that play out that, like, people planned it to go this way, but it's going this way. But she's one of the protagonists of the book. So she is Talon's AI, and she is not evil. She doesn't specifically care about any people but hers, but she's evil.
Do you find yourself gravitating towards a specific style when it comes to like third person or first person narrative?
Yeah, I think I tend to navigate. I tend to go towards third person. I just wrote my first person novel, co-wrote with fabulous Bill Webb, and that was fun. It's harder. Like it's easy when the voice is clear. It is harder when the voice isn't quite right. Because like I can write about how you think about you, but actually writing like how you say it is a little different because the narrative is harder to keep consistent. Because first person only knows what they know.
Yeah.
And otherwise you're breaking rules.
And then you have the really difficult one that I've only seen pulled off a couple times, which is first person, but the author is, or the first person is not telling you everything.
Yes.
So you have to withhold audience or information that the person in their head actually knows.
Yes.
That's very difficult.
Very hard to pull off.
Tim Zahn, who's also a Baen author, he did that with one of his novels, The Icarus Hunt.
Yes.
And it was very difficult to pull off because you have to reveal information, but in a very specific way.
Yes. The unreliable narrator is one of my favorite tropes when it's done right. Yeah. And you're right. Like my goal, like I'll know that I have made it and gotten smart as an author when I can pull that off. I am not there yet.
No. Well, you'll be a smart writer if you can pull off second person.
Oh.
Like nobody can do that one.
Yeah, one
Except
time.
for little kid picture books.
But. Yeah. Oh, those are pretty great. Yeah. It's good.
Is there a place people can find you online, and do you have any other conventions that you're going to be going to in the next year or so? Good
question. So online, yes, you can find me at marisawolf.net or marisawolf.com because I bought them both. You can also, thank you. If you like books and you like dogs, you can follow me on Instagram at bookdogs. That's most of what you're going to get.
Book dogs.
My books.
How was that one not
yeah.
already taken?
I know. I was so pleased because my name was taken, which is crazy.
Not a common name.
Yeah, and like there's 3 of us. Like I don't. dang it, ladies! Like you got there. So that all variations, like Wolf Marisa Wolf. Even I think my married name was taken. It was absurd. But Book Dogs was not. But I have gotten some messages from people who are like, "Oh, I thought I was messaging this dog in this bookstore," and I was like, "No, but thank you. Like, that's very kind." And as for conventions, Dragon Con is my last convention this year. Next year I will for sure be at Mid-South Con in March. March is a month. In March, and then Liberty Con in June. And then hopefully Dragon Con and a couple others. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing the interview with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
You can find her books wherever books are sold, both in stores and online. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.